Hey y'all,
What's going on, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd,
and we
and
are
we are
the
the
Bird
Bird
Brain.
Brains. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Oh, drop my mug.
Yeah, don't be doing
They are not unbreakable.
that.
Do not take your mugs on airplanes. All right, tough one today. Tough one we're going to
Yeah,
talk about.
yeah,
Got this
maybe,
as a topic request.
yeah, and I was gonna say, I think we like to focus on the good things, right? And the positives of birds. But let's be honest, crap happens, and there's a lot of the bad that comes with the good. And so we're going to focus today on heartbreaking moments, heartbreaking stories, things that have happened to our birds in the past that we're not proud of, but we hopefully have learned from the mistakes. But it happens in the world of bird keeping and probably really with any type of animal keeping, let's be honest. If you do it consistently enough, something's probably going to happen. And yeah, so I think we're going to hit that topic today and hopefully keep it entertaining. It won't be too depressing and down, but and hopefully have some learning moments, right? That we can educate everyone around and what we've learned from these moments and be able to share that with others. So hopefully it doesn't happen to you.
Right, and I mean, for me, I think of myself like I always say I keep birds. And I'll say they're my birds, but I don't find myself often calling them like I own these birds. I say like I keep these birds, right? I feel like I'm a steward of
Yeah.
them, not I'm not necessarily the master. I'm just the guy that's lucky enough to get to have them. And
Yes.
so if that's your mindset, when you lose one, it's really it's really tough. And when you keep, I mean, I've got 96 birds in the aviary right now, counting babies. And when you're breeding, especially, you're gonna lose birds, right?
Yeah.
In the egg, as chicks, the parents are gonna make mistakes. I mean, so I've got my first cockatiel baby in the nest right now. Two siblings hatched out and just didn't survive. And I don't know if they didn't survive because the parents didn't do something right or if I didn't do something right. I'm thinking it's the parents because the previous clutch to this, they had some chicks not make it out of the egg. Um, and it seems like they were doing better and better every time.
Yep.
Um, but that's part of the process, and that's what would happen in nature too. And I guess I'll start the episode by saying this. Something I always tell people when they're disheartened is like, look, the average, and I need to go refine where I found these statistics, but roughly the average survival rate for a finch in the wild from hatch, so not even up to hatch because it would be worse, but
Yeah.
hatch to adulthood, like sexual maturity, which in most finches is like 6 months, is 5%. So for every 100 that hatch,
Wow.
five even make it to adulthood. Not living a full life as an adult, but just get to where you can like legally say this is an adult bird.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're hypothetically, let's just say your success rate breeding was 50%, that doesn't sound that good until you consider that that is 10 times what they would get in the wild. So something to consider. Don't let a mistake you made ruin the hobby for you.
Yes. And I've had a few in the past, I'll be honest, Jay, where
Well,
I
we're
have
about to list them.
seriously considered, do I still want to do this? You know, it's like you're frustrated at yourself. You feel bad for the birds because that's not the intentions, right? And there's times where I've strongly considered, and I've talked to my wife. I'm like, do I still want to do this? I mean, is it worth it? Am I doing a good enough job? So yeah, it's don't beat yourself up too bad, but I would just say, if anything, learn from the mistake and try not to make it again. We're human, right? We make mistakes, like you said, Jay.
Mm.
we're probably doing it better than if the bird was in the wild, statistically speaking. And so, that's definitely a positive to take away from this.
Or and I think that attitude is the right attitude to have. Do I get back to that steward thing? Am I doing right by these birds? Am I responsible enough? Am I doing a good enough job that I deserve to keep doing this, right? So I mean, if you approach bird keeping with that attitude, I think you're going to be okay. The people that think of them as, oh, that one died. And I see it. I mean, I see it in the local pet store. I bought a zebra finch, died last week. After I had it for 3 days, it died. I'll just go
Yeah.
spend $30 and get another zebra finch, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe time to think about it. But if you're doing it like we're doing it, you're giving it your all. You're doing your homework, right? Do your homework, and you lose a bird. You know, live and learn, do better for the next one, but don't let it become the thing that ruins your whole life. Um,
And Jay, if you don't mind, I want to kick us off because I had something happen this morning
yeah,
that
yeah. I thought
that
we might get here quickly.
that made me strongly consider it. And I'm not gonna say the species because I'm actually posting a video on this next week. I'm not sure exactly when this episode comes out, but it'll be pretty close to when I'm gonna be pushing out this video. So I don't want to spoil it. Um, Very expensive birds and something that probably I've been trying to have as my main focus currently on this species. And I Jay knows because I was texting him this morning. We actually had our birds that we shipped to each other came to us this morning, and I was so excited for the birds that Jay had sent me. So that helped. And when I walked into my bird shed, seeing what I would call a disaster. Long story short, I'm in Utah. We still get fairly chilly nights. We're in springtime, so we're dropping down to 40s on a cold night now. And I've got my heater in my bird shed. It's on the thermostat. So in the day when it's 70 plus degrees, it's not on. And then at night it kicks on once it gets below a certain temp. Keeps my bird shed just warm enough. I still have my windows open to like my aviary. So if the birds want to sleep out in the aviary, they can. They're my hardier birds, so I'm not too concerned. Most of them come into the shed. They know by now it's warmer at night. My son turned off my heater yesterday, and the funny thing is I saw him do it, and I was thinking to myself, we're getting warm. It's probably not kicking on too much at night, and I didn't turn it back on. It's 100% my bad. Came into my aviary holding the two boxes of birds that Jay just sent me with a smile from ear to ear, and I walk in my bird shed and I see multiple dead birds. Not just one, multiple of the same species that I'm just set up for breeding, and I was devastated. And the only thing I can think of is the heater. They had food, they had water. There were no signs of illness. I mean, they were building a nest and were laying eggs. I mean, they were healthy enough that they were active and wanting to breed. Lost two females and a male. Over $1,000 of birds. Just made me sick, and I just wanted to punch myself in the stomach knowing that I didn't turn that heater on yesterday. That probably would have been the game changer there. And I'll tell you what, I'll never make that mistake again. My heater is turned on right now for that very purpose. Especially until we get into some warmer nights that don't drop below 50 at night, which is probably enough for the birds to survive. But yeah, it just made me sick. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I got to go to work," and I had a crazy day today, and that just added to the chaos, and was super frustrated with myself. And sometimes it sucks. I really questioned if I just send these birds back to Jay and say, "You know what, dude? Maybe I can't
Yeah,
keep the birds." It's so it kind of crappy, but like I said, I'll learn from it, and won't make that mistake again for sure. But it's a pretty big, strong punch to the stomach that I got this morning.
Yeah, I mean that sucks. And the hard part for that is you thought about it and thought you made the right call too, right? So it's not like
Yeah,
you were just it wasn't even like a mechanical failure or something. You're like you saw it, you said, "Oh, I think I'm okay," and you weren't, and it's just a
yeah.
bummer. Man, I've got a bunch of them. Is that your most expensive one ever?
No.
Yeah,
That's
so I've
close.
got
That's probably one of my most, but not quite. But yeah, I'll let you
yeah,
share a good one, and then I can
I've
touch
got a
on that one.
$1,200 one. So when I first started the outdoor aviary, I I don't know if I even was videoing or doing Instagram at this point, but it's actually the same cage is actually the cover photo for my YouTube. So I had ordered it was like $1,200 worth of birds. There was a red-billed firefinch. It makes me sick just saying that. A bunch of Gouldians, a starfinch, whole bunch of beautiful birds. I'd ordered all in one order, and I had them all in a. At the time, I had one really big quarantine cage, which I don't do it that way anymore for a whole bunch of reasons. The primary reason is I maybe this story, but also I tend to when I'm acquiring birds, which usually happens either right before or right at the start of breeding season, I end up getting birds from different places, and I don't want to quarantine them together either. So, and some of my stories about this are going to be quarantine stories, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I had them all in this cage, and my bird shed at the top, it has openings all around the top to let, because I have two problems, right? I have too cold in the winter, and then I'm too hot in the summer. So it's opened all around the top, and at the time I just had mosquito mesh, like the plastic mesh, and then that was also on the front of the birdcage. I think I had something more stout, but on top, same thing. And I actually went out of town for the weekend. My wife and I went to a wedding or something, and my poor mother-in-law was watching the birds. She was staying in our house, watching the birds and the kids and everything else. So she called me and she said, I think I've made a terrible mistake. She's like about to cry. And she said, I went in to check on the birds this morning, and the quarantine cage is empty, and there's what's left of the birds all over the ground. And the other cages all had like more solid roofs, but this one did not. So some animal, and to this day I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was a raccoon or a big rat or a cat. I don't know what. Tore down that plastic mesh, went through the top, and all I found,
Uh,
and I was hopeful when I got home I'd find one or two loose birds in there, but no, got all, it was like 10 or 11 birds. Got them all, and all I found was like feathers and like little remnants of bird. Like usually they'll leave like the legs and the wings because there's not much meat there,
yep.
and just buzzsawed all those birds. And that was a yeah, one of those what am I doing moments. If you go in my aviary now, you probably would need to do like a smash and grab with a truck to get into any of my cages.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd had it up for like a year. I'd never had a problem. Certainly didn't think I was going to have any problem. And for whatever reason, just the wrong animal happened to cross them at the wrong time. And there you go. And you live and you learn. Now, all around the aviary, hardware cloth, metal mesh. So nothing can get in. But I mean, I still get rodents every now and again, but no big
Yeah.
predator can get in.
Yeah. I've
All
I've
right.
had something very similar to that, Jay. And I don't know if I've really ever talked about this. So when my wife and I first married, we actually were living in this house. This is my wife's grandmother's house. We ended up purchasing it from her several years later. But where my aviary is now, my new aviary that I built, I built a little mini shed when we lived there. It's just this little like rectangle shed that, and I had I don't know. I mean, it was big enough. I had stacked several cages in there. and I probably had like 50 birds in there, but they're all in these like stackable cages. It wasn't,
Mm.
I probably wouldn't recommend that now, to be honest with you, because they're, lots of small cages in a tight space. It's just not what I would recommend. But same thing. It was hot summer day. I didn't have, AC in there or anything, so I just opened up the door to try and get some breeze going through there for the birds. Left it open at night. Cat came in, probably took half of my birds. Gouldians, cordon bleus, firefinches, canaries. I think I totaled it to around like $1,800 worth of birds. I mean,
Ugh.
just wiped me out. And so I actually, that was the point where I ended up selling the rest of my birds, and
And took your break.
I did, and sold this little makeshift shed that I had built, and spent the last year of us living here in this house with no birds, and well, one bird we had, and he will be part of my story too. Um, and then moved into to our first home that we had purchased, and then it was about a year later is when I started building the shed and the aviary, and getting into birds again. So I had close to a 2 year break. It hit me, and I was like, no, I'm done. And it helped me reassess too. The current situation that I had wasn't the best for the birds, and I paid the price for it. Let's be honest. And unfortunately, the birds paid the price for it too. And so it was a good learning moment for me to take that and say, okay, next time that I'm going to build something for my birds, because I want to get back into it, it's going to be something that is safe for the birds, and hopefully would cut down, like you said, Jay, on the losses and predators getting in, things like that,
Mhm.
and just creating a safer environment, and a better environment for the birds, which I feel like I succeeded in when I rebuilt it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
it
you
sucked.
did. Yeah, I mean that sucks, and I mean we did a pest control episode, right? I mean it's a constant battle with outdoor bird keeping because they're small and tasty.
Yeah.
Apparently, I've never eaten one,
Yeah.
but the yeah. So let's go. All right, I had two bad ones in college. So in college, I had actually sweet aviary. From my point of view, it probably was alarming to other people. So I had an apartment and I lofted my bed, and underneath my bed I built so it was 5 feet tall and whatever the dimensions of a full bed are, a glassed in aviary. So like I had a ladder that took you up to the bed and down, and then to clean the bird cage you unhooked the ladder, and then it had like a full size door and you could get in and do your bird thing.
Yeah.
um and then I had also at the time I had, and if I'm a graduate of the University of Georgia, go Dogs. Um, if you, the year before that, I lived in the dorms. Freshman year, you had to, and at the time, birds were not specifically listed as not allowed in the dorms. They are now listed as not allowed in the dorms, thanks to yours truly.
I was gonna say due to
Um,
Jay.
yeah, literally due to me. So I had a pair of budgies in the dorm. I snuck the budgies in. I put them in a travel cage, and I zipped the travel cage up very temporarily in a like a rolling suitcase, and I just wheeled it right past the front desk, right in the elevator, and then I had a pair of budgies in my room. So that lasted about 3 months, and then I got caught, and I got told you got to get rid of these. So sent them home for the year. Lost the female while I was at home. Unfortunately, my younger brother, who was like 12 at the time, was taking care of them, and he didn't understand that seed husks are not the same as seed. So she, I guess, starved to death, which is
Oh
brutal.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I almost beat the crap out of him, and he was so apologetic. I reacted very unfairly, but I was very upset. We're friends.
Yeah.
It's good. Um, and then so I just had my male. His name was Rocket, and I had gotten Rocket as a hand-fed baby. I got him when I was in high school. I was very close with him. So I got into college, so I had the birds, that sweet bird setup. I also had some fish tanks. I mean, I had a cool apartment. I decided I was going to get a ferret. So I also had a pet ferret. Well, you can probably tell where this is going. So Rocket had free roam of the room of my bedroom. He had his cage, but then he also had like a playpen up on top of one of the aquariums. And I just screwed like a little rope off the side of the bed so he could get down on the ground, he could jump around, he could climb up that rope and get up to the play area. And I was always very careful to keep my bedroom door shut when I was playing with the ferret. And I would just let the ferret out in the living room, and he lived out on the porch in a cage out there when he wasn't inside. Well, I'm watching TV one day with the ferret, and I realize, where'd he go? Well, you know where he went. I had forgotten to shut my
Oh
bedroom door.
no.
He got in there and he got Rocket. So, very graphically, I came into him eating Rocket. You know, just as happy as a ferret can be. And you can't blame the ferret.
Right.
He's a weasel. It's his job to eat birds. And you can't blame Rocket because he'd never seen a ferret before and he had never had an issue. So,
Right. He
my
felt
fault.
safe in your house. Yep. I one time, so this actually wasn't me that did it, thankfully. But I was there, and at the time, I remember I was young. I was probably like 16 years old. So growing up, we kind of had this triangle of bird owners. So my dad had an aviary, a couple aviaries of birds, and then my best friend growing up in school, his dad had he actually had an awesome setup. He had four huge aviaries, like big walk-in aviaries, and he mostly kept parrots, larger hookbills, things like that. And then across the street from him was another gentleman that's kind of similar situation, similar deal. He had lots of big aviaries and kept. He had a really wide range, all the way down to zebra finches, but mostly was into the hookbills, the ringnecks, the Princess of Wales, Australian birds, things like that. And I remember I was at his house, and I just go over there every once in a while and just go tour the birds with them. We were good friends, and they were good family friends of ours. And we're walking around, and he has this one aviary set up that he mostly kept his finches in. And he had just gotten a pair of canaries. And at the time, it was a red factor pair of canaries, which was really hard to find in Utah, 20 plus years ago. And they had bred, and they only had one chick in the nest, and he was really excited to show me. And we like go into this aviary, and he like picks it up, and he's like showing me. He's like, "Oh, look at this canary chick! I'm so excited for it." And it's old enough that it's starting to get pin feathers, and it slips out of his hand, and he drops it down on the ground, lands on a rock, and just on its head, instantly like kills it. And
Oh,
he just like picks up this baby, and he's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, and super frustrated. And then he like turns to me and he's like, "Well, I can't do anything about this now. Do you want to see something else?" And I'm like, sure." He takes me in. His sons had gone and caught a big bullfrog, and he had it in this
oh, and he
bucket.
feeds the
He's like,
canary, the dead
Watch
canary to
this,"
the
and he like
bullfrog.
dangles this canary over, and the bullfrog about eats his fingers off, and it chomps this baby canary in one bite, and I'm just like wide eyed. I'm like, "What the heck did I just
What
watch?"
is going on?
I'm like, I guess that's the circle of life right there. He just demonstrated it for me in captivity, but yeah, I just remember him dropping it. He was just like so mad at himself. He's like, "This just freaking sucks." And then he's just like, "Well, you want to see something else?" and feeds it to his bullfrog. I was like, huh, okay, I guess, yeah, I guess you got a
Jeez,
solution
yeah.
for it, but it was pretty crazy. Have you ever, Jay? I've done this a couple times. I didn't know if you have. Have you ever like opened up an egg and saw that there's a live chicken there, and you're like, "Oh crap"?
I
You
did
ever
it a
done anything
couple
like
months
that?
ago. Yeah, I did it a couple months ago. I've done it. I so I've intentionally smashed fertile eggs before, and a lot of bird keepers do that. Dispose of fertile eggs if you have too many babies and you don't want more, and I don't have a problem with that. A lot of people will just pull eggs. Um, every once in a while, and right now I'm breeding as many birds as I can. I'm not stopping anybody at all. I have a great setup. I have great places to send my birds. I'm shipping. I've not had over like 114 chicks fledge last year. Kept
Nice.
maybe four or five, and the rest found a place for them to go very easily. But every once in a while, for whatever reason, like the most recent time, so my cockatiels, I've talked about in previous episodes, my cockatiels are learning how to breed. So not this clutch, which they have a baby out of this clutch doing great, but the clutch before that, they had laid five eggs. One was infertile, one died in the egg. And their first clutch, a bunch had died in the egg. So and one did it this clutch. So I just assumed so they had two try to hatch on the same day and they didn't make it out of the egg. I found one halfway out still moving, tried to help him, he didn't survive, and the other one I found already dead, like halfway out of the egg. So they had one egg left that had not hatched yet, and I thought, oh, it died in the egg also. So as part of, I wanted them to start over. So I pulled all the eggs, cleaned out the nest box, and I always, if I think one died in the egg, I'll crack it to see what happened, if I can maybe learn something from that. And sure enough, I cracked the egg, and there's a couple days out from hatching, cockatiel chick moving, which is not what you want. So yeah, I had to euthanize that bird, and it was just heartbreaking.
Yep. I've I feel like almost identical to that, except it was a budget parakeet egg, and I was still in high school, so I was young, and I had this pair that I'd set up that I was really excited about. It was like a lime green female, and then it was like a pied sky blue male that
Mm.
I was, really excited to see what kind of colors I could get out of them. I was this young kid, and they'd only laid two eggs in the nest, which isn't very typical for your parakeets, right? But the one was fertile and died in the egg, and the other one I thought had done the same thing. Took it out, opened it up, and the hard thing is you just like what you said. It was a few days out from hatching, so it wasn't quite ready to hatch. So it wasn't like I could have just put it back in the nest and
Yeah.
parents would have thought, oh, my egg hatched and there's a chick. It wouldn't have survived. And but I've got this chick moving in this egg that I've opened, and I'm like devastated as this like 17-year-old kid. Like I've never like purposely killed a bird before, and I'm like, well, I can't just let it suffer. And same thing, had to euthanize it, and I think I vividly still remember that day, which is a good thing because I've tried really hard now to not do that. And I wait those extra couple days just to ensure the egg is not going to hatch out. And then that's when I usually will take the eggs out and dispose of them if they don't hatch. But man, yeah,
Yeah.
it kicked my butt.
I mean, I tell people wait 5 days at least past the hatching date. It's not going to hurt anything. And I'm 20 something years in this hobby, and I just made a mistake. It's easy. I mean, like what happened with you with the parafinches, right? It's easy. I have almost like too much knowledge now, where like I think I've got it figured out, and you'll be humbled. You can be humbled being that way.
Yeah.
Um, so here's my other bad college story. So in that aviary I was talking about, I had like 40 birds. Um, went to a bird show. I actually, that one-legged shaft-tail male we talked about before, he passed away, and so I had a hen shaft-tail, no male. He passed away of like old age. He was old when I got him, and he had one leg. I mean, he had a great life with me. It was cool when he landed on a perch, he would hold one wing out, and that was how he
Uh-huh.
balanced. So he had like a wing that had like a callus. It was cool. Always used the same wing. So anyway, so go to the bird show like one does. I was in college in Athens. I went to the bird show in Gwinnett County, which is like the northeastern suburb of Atlanta. So I drive about an hour, and there's a lot of finches. There's probably honestly that was probably the kind of the high water mark in my mind of finches
Yeah.
as far as bird shows go. There were a lot to choose from, and probably, if I had to guess, I don't remember, but I was probably strapped for cash. I probably went with the cheapest option that, uh,
Yeah.
and I didn't know anything about quarantine or anything really. I didn't, I mean, I'm only at this point maybe like 3 or 4 years into bird keeping, maybe five. And um, I picked a male shaft tail out that seemed fine. And as we've talked about before, birds hide when they're sick, big
Yeah.
time. So I got back to school, went to the aviary, and what did I do? I just took him right out of the travel cage and whoop, right in. Well, everything was fine for a day. The next day, I look at him and he's on the perch, all curled up, all puffed up. Darn it. The next day, he's dead, and half my birds are puffed up. And the next day,
Oh no.
half of them are dead, and the rest of my birds are puffed up. And I ended up losing, yeah, probably like 15 birds from that one bird that were all they were doing great. If I had just
Yeah.
not put him in, they'd have been fine. And I went back to the next bird show, and there's that guy again selling all these birds. And I said to somebody else that was selling finches, I said, that guy sold me a sick bird. And she said, yeah, you're the fifth person today to tell me about him.
Oh really?
Yeah, and
Man.
it's like, so there's a lot of lessons there, right? So pay attention to who you're getting a bird from, pay attention to the bird, and please quarantine. Please,
Yes,
please,
man.
please. Ask me how I know. I don't say
Uh-huh.
quarantine because it's fun for me for you to have to wait 3 weeks.
Yep.
Say it because I've learned it the very hard way. I've lost some very expensive and very sentimental to me birds from not
Yep.
quarantining.
And we just talked about this, the video before the episode before this, right? Quarantine,
Mhm.
quarantine, quarantine. And we're talking about each other's birds that we just received this day, right? And we know each other, we know each other's birds. I know you have healthy birds. Your birds look great coming to me, but I'm still quarantining them, right? I'm still going to give them
Right.
set, still quarantine them, still give them that time period just to make sure everything's okay.
Yep. Yep. My protocol doesn't change. It doesn't matter who I get them from. Um, Honestly, like if I kept birds in like two locations, like if I had like inside birds and outside birds and I was going to change between them, I might even quarantine then. I mean, that's how anal I am about it from this lesson, learning it the hard way.
Yeah.
That was probably the closest I ever came to being like, and honestly, kept birds for another year, but I did not keep them my senior year, and then I didn't keep them for several years out of college. So that probably was for me. That took a lot of wind out of the bird keeping sales. Yeah.
For sure. So I think my last story that I'm going to share, Jay. So I've in previous years I have owned a couple different conures, types of conures. I had a red-throated conure growing up, noisy as heck, and they're not very common. Just like an all green and then a red. It looks like the red-throated parrotfinch, but in a conure form. I mean, almost exactly. Um, Mean as all get out, man. That bird is so mean. And then I had him most of my childhood. He was given to my dad. My dad was a mailman. He came across this family. They were moving and they just gave him the bird. So he just came home randomly with this bird. And man, he was so mean. And then when I was first year of marriage, my wife surprised me for my birthday and she had bought me a pineapple green cheek conure. And
I
just,
know this
just
story. Yeah.
yeah, and I might have shared it before, but I think this one was really sad for me because I loved that bird. We got him young enough. It was literally like the week before he was weaning, so we helped kind of hand feed him for the last like week and a half, as he was transitioning, and he just connected with us. He bonded with us big time, and he was literally a child in our family. Acted like a dog. He followed us anywhere. When we were home, he was out of his cage, whether he was just playing on his cage on his playset, following us around the house, or snuggling with my wife and I. My wife is not a bird person, but she connected with him, and she really um, took care of him quite a bit while I was at work. And we had him for several years. I think I had him for about 5 years, and he had this thing with closet doors, man. And when he's on the floor, if you open a door and close it, he would just attack the bottom corner of it. He was a nice bird. He, friendly with everybody, but something with the doors triggered him. And when you close it, like he's trying to bite it as you're closing it. And one day she wasn't paying attention, opened the pantry door, getting some stuff, closed it as he was trying to attack it, and crack, closes closed his head into the door. I mean, the poor dude thankfully died instantly, but yep, broke his neck and it took him out. And I was really heartbroken there. I mean, I felt like I lost like a family member, a kid. He and I had a special bond. He had bonded with my first daughter. They had a good connection. She's only like 3 years old at this time, or coming up to 3 years old, but she got to the point where she could literally like handle him in ways that I couldn't, and he would just if I tried to do that, he would nip at me, and she would just do it, and he just knew, and he was super gentle with her. Such a cool bird. Yeah, and that's the last time that I've owned a bird inside the house, and it's been probably 5 years since that, 8 years since that. My daughter's 10 now. So, yeah, so it's the last time that we've owned, a larger hookbill in the house. I do have Mikey, and he is a tame bird for me, but he stays out in the bird shed. He's not an indoor pet like how his name was Sunny, our conure. But that was pretty hard for me. I cried a few days. I haven't cried over many birds, but I shed a few tears for him, and my wife did as well. And so, but yeah, it was kind of tough.
If something happened to Einstein, I think I'd cry.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, okay, so here's my last one. So yeah, I've had the aviary maybe 2 years, and this is another one where it's like something out of my control happened and then I compounded it. So I where I live, my house is like blocked in by cinder blocks and then has vines like to hide the cinder block walls. So animals, in this case rats, can get up over the wall
yeah,
and then come explore in the yard. And I've got dogs that come out in the yard, and I thought I didn't have an issue. I thought I had everything blocked off. Well, um, when I rebuilt the aviary about 2 years ago, trying to save money, I hardware cloth the sides, and it has a roof over it, but the roof is not like the top of the aviary is flat, and then it has a slanted roof above it, and there's like a crawl space kind of or an attic that is just open. And at the time, I didn't have it blocked off because it was just rainproofing. It wasn't anything else proofing. And on top of the aviary, I did metal mosquito screen, which here keeps coming the lesson. Don't use mosquito screen. And then on top of that, I put just like the plastic chicken fencing
yeah,
that a bird can't get through. And I mistakenly thought no animal could get through. Well, I came into the aviary one day, and one of my quail had like a wound on its side, like a circular wound, and I thought, man, that's odd. But I thought another quail had done it. I thought it had pissed off another quail, and it had just really gone after it. So I took that one out and put it in a hospital cage, ironically. Put some antibiotic cream on it. That bird ended up surviving. What I didn't do was look up, and if I had, I would have seen the hole that the rat had made in the ceiling or in the roof, that it had gone up, over, down, and in. And the rat had gotten back out. There wasn't a rat in the cage somewhere. Well, I also at the time I had a bunch more button quail, and I had a male starfinch that had come to me. I think he was inbred. His wings were like too small, and he couldn't fly. He could fly a little bit. He had like a
yeah,
parachute, but he couldn't gain altitude. He could fly straight across for a little bit, or he could so like to get to the top, he would go branch to branch to branch to get up.
yeah,
But he spent a lot of time on the ground, and I didn't mind. He was cool.
yeah.
Well, and then I had all the button quail on the ground. So I came in the next day, and I'm missing like three quail, and
Oh
there's
no.
feathers everywhere. And then he's missing, and I'm digging around, and I find one leg. And then I realize it wasn't another quail. something got to these birds, and I look up and I see, the 3-inch hole.
Yeah.
And so that sucked. It sucked for a lot of reasons. It sucked because I had to cancel my plans for that day, right? Because now I'm doing an aviary renovation, going to Home Depot right then.
Yep.
And then I have to pull the whole roof off the aviary, lay 2 things of hardware cloth, which is painful, takes all day, 1,000 staples, etc.
Yeah.
Lost all these birds. It's my fault, and I didn't catch it in time. And then I also have to go tell my wife that, hey, surprise, we're spending a couple $100 today. So just sucks all the way around. But I mean, look, there's all I've heard and seen birds flying into ceiling fans, birds flying into an
Yeah.
open toilet and drowning,
Into windows or yeah.
into windows, all kinds of stuff. You're gonna make mistakes. Learn from the mistakes we have made. Quarantine your birds. Think about pest control and pest intrusion prevention in advance. Um, and try not to make the same mistake twice, and try to minimize your mistakes, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing I've come to realize with, especially with the smaller finches, if there's a way that they can injure themselves, they're gonna find it. It's sometimes what it seems to be, whether it's something that you just can't predict, and no matter how safe proof you make your cages and your aviaries, there's gonna be something that happens. But just trying your best, like Jay said, learn from us, and you know try to take those extra precautions so that we can try and keep as safe of an environment, and keep our companions as long as we can, as far as our pet companions, right? And and just realize crap's going to happen sometimes, learn from it, and as long as you're trying to provide the best environment that you can, that's sometimes all we can ask for. And learning from that and moving on. When the problem is when we don't learn from that, right? And we keep that same environment, and then that same issue keeps reoccurring. That's where you probably should question whether you should still keep the animals or not, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. I think Jay, I know these aren't very happy stories, but some of them you can find some humor in, and
Yeah.
and seeing the different personalities of animals, and the different situations and what occurred in them. Always want to make sure and highlight some of, I guess you could say, the darker or the sadder sides of keeping animals, even
Keeping it
outside
real,
of
right?
birds. Yeah, keeping it real, exactly. I think many times we, in social media, try and keep this ideal world of everything's great. Our birds are always healthy. We never have any accidents. Nothing ever happens, and that's just not reality. And for anybody, I don't care who you are. And
Yeah.
eventually something's going to happen, especially if you're keeping animals on a large scale. And so, but I think just realizing it, learning from it, and moving on, improving it.
Right. Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, right? Be a good steward, do your homework, provide the best environment you're able to provide for birds. And I'll also say, you don't, patience is a virtue. You don't have to
Yeah,
rush out. If you've got a cage that's really only ethical for 2 birds, and you really want 4 birds, but you don't have the money for another cage, or you don't have a way to get another cage, just hold off. Just wait.
yeah, yeah,
It'll all end up working out. I promise you. I never dreamed that I would have the aviary I have now. I never dreamed that I would have a bird podcast, right?
yeah.
At one
Same.
point, I was a goofy high school kid with birds in my room and a pissed off sister who shared the air vent because she lived underneath me. I mean, it'll all work out. Take your time. Life is long. This hobby
Yep.
is growing. I hope it's definitely ever changing, and
Yeah, yeah,
the opportunities tend to, I knew that I wanted a big bird, and eventually I found Einstein, right? I mean, it'll end up manifesting itself. Don't
right.
force something you don't need to force,
Yeah, don't
because
don't
you
have
don't want to
buyer's
have,
regret.
right? Don't have stories like this that you don't need to have, right?
He'll be feeding your animals to bullfrogs. So that's
Yeah,
great.
wow, I'm sure 8-year-old me would have been, oh,
Oh,
okay.
I was pretty wide-eyed on that one. I was like, okay, this is happening.
Yeah, yeah, this is, yeah, wide-eyed is probably the right
Yeah,
expression for a lot of these stories.
yeah.
All right,
I
well,
love it.
I don't know if we want to drop our socials after that one.
Yeah, no kidding,
Yeah,
right?
um, where can they find you?
Yeah, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. That's the platforms I utilize most. Bird Nerd for all of them. Instagram is Bird Nerd 4. So, and trying to get it out there as well. Jump on to my website, littlebirdnerd.com, where you can get some Bird Brains merch and some incredible mugs. I know we're trying to do some giveaways here in some of our episodes, to encourage you guys to keep watching these and show some appreciation for you guys watching them as well and sending out some merch to you guys and things like that. So yeah, you can get a hold of me in any of those platforms. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I was gonna say, y'all. So if you think we're making big money off this, I've got news. We are not.
No.
And in fact, we have to pay money monthly for the podcasting software, for all of our equipment and everything else. So, if you buy merch, it's covering the podcast so we can keep making these. It's helping us with our birds so we can keep being experts and helping you with your birds. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, and I dream of one day seeing my merch in the wild. So
Yes.
please, if you're thinking, man, these guys help me so much, we love the podcast, you can help us by buying a coffee mug or a
Absolutely.
shirt or a
Please.
hat or whatever you want. There's a ton of cool, different stuff on the website. So go check it out. Um, if you're looking for me, you can find me as the Javiary or the underscore Javiary on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, Threads, Snail Mail, the Bat Signal, pretty much everywhere you can find me. Thread sucks, and I think that's all I've got.
Dude,
We're always here to help.
we need to highlight the bat signal. I mean, it's a bird for crying out loud.
The
How can we
bird,
tap into that more?
the bird brains bat signal.
You guys just
Yeah,
send that out if you need our help. So,
right. Yeah, and we really do want to help. I mean, I get DMs all the time.
yes.
I try to mix it up on Reddit. I mean, if you've got a question, I mean, I have a video playlist that's like FAQ, like frequently asked questions. We have these podcast episodes, but we're always here to help. We'd love if you have a question, drop it in the comments. Maybe we'll do it for an episode or a topic you want us to cover.
Yeah.
Um, Most of them are more upbeat than this one, but
Yes.
um, you got to take the bad with the good sometimes.
Absolutely. Keeping it
You
real.
know, we do keep it real, and Chris and I have both been doing this for a long time, but there's always more to learn, I promise you. So
Every
still
day.
learning, still trying to improve and be the best bird keepers we can be.
Yep. Don't be like me and turn your heaters on tonight. That was my
There
lesson
you
today
go.
after
There you
how many
go.
years of keeping birds.
Quarantine your birds. All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all. We'll catch you in the next one.
See you guys.